Oh, yeah. Hello everybody and welcome to the Environment Committee meeting on Monday the 18th of September 2023. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Just Councillor Leslie.
Thank you. And declarations of interest, please. Anybody? No? Pecuniary interests? None? And item 4, public participation. Would any members? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to, I know you're going to talk about Bannon's later on, but I just want to say, Vera knows me very well because she's my neighbour. We attended lots of meetings with Bannon's over the last 4 or 5 years, myself and other residents. And this culminated last year, as you know, in Bannon's being fined £300,000 for the breach of their permissions for foul odour and being severely reprimanded by the judge. Crown Court. And I have to say, since the new company took over, things haven't been too bad, but in the last 2 months it's got very bad. And I've had to report to the Environment Agency hotline several times in the last few weeks. I suffer where I live from something called plume drop, in that the odour goes up Bannon's chimney, it comes out into the atmosphere and it drops onto my drive. If the wind's in a certain direction, if it's in the opposite direction, it goes to Blenheim Drive and Lays Lane. So on Friday of this week, I sat in the garden with my neighbour and it was vile, absolutely vile. It's rotting flesh. I was a nurse for 40 years and I know the smell of rotting flesh. And I do not want to smell it in my garden. And we've been going on like this now for years. There's been 2 different companies taken over Bannon since the Folgers, and here we are again after a £300,000 fine, still having this same conversation. I no longer have a contact at the Environment Agency because Sophie Cousins, who was in charge of the case, has now moved on. So I just want to know really what on earth can we do about this?
Okay. Sorry. So what I was going to say is on our outside bodies as a representative for the Bannon Poultry Liaison Group is Councillor Dale.
Yeah.
I also sit on that liaison panel as a district councillor along with Councillor Tristan Ashby. And our next meeting is on Wednesday, the 4th of October. As part of that liaison panel, there is people from obviously Brecon Council, the Town Council, Bannon Poultry, the Environment Agency, Brecon Council, Environmental Health, and I think between us there is an awareness. I know that Councillor Ashby already this month on a couple of occasions has actually emailed that because we have a distribution list for the Bannon Poultry Liaison. I know that he has emailed a couple of times this month flagging not only foul odour but actually also noise complaints, and he himself lives like pretty much directly next to Bannon Poultry, so just at the top of Gamers. So I feel like it is something that you do have ward members that they're very aware of this. Obviously the Town Council itself can make representations to Bannon Poultry and we can consider that further down the agenda at the item under correspondence. But it is something that as individuals some of us do raise frequently, and something that we can carry forward in that forum for you. And I was also going to say that I have also had representations made to me as a Town Council ward member that I have passed on again through this panel. So then every time an email is sent on this thread, automatically the Environment Agency and all of the relevant officers across the authorities are aware of the situation. So I'm happy to do that again and say, you know, actually we had a resident attend a meeting last night, and if you have anything that you want to send to myself or Vera or Tristan, we can raise it for you then. And I have been given a point of contact, obviously, to report incidences where there is a complaint to Bannon Poultry directly, which I think those stats are reviewed by the Environment Agency, and that is something that we can then pick up. But even if you do send it, if I provide you with that information, if you copy in your ward members so they're aware of it, then I feel like there's no wiggle room as well. But I can provide that to you at the end of the
Yeah.
meeting,
Okay.
or if you give me your details, I can forward it across to you.
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm just wondering where they go next because they've been fined, they've broken the law, and now this company is doing the same thing. So surely the Environment Agency needs to have it involved, don't they?
Yeah. And we can make those representations as well. Did any other members of the public have anything to add, Mr. Boyce?
Just very briefly on the same sort of topic, having gone through the mill with Environment Agency, they want to, they'll just find them. But bearing in mind AMP development of the town, you are going to have an abattoir slap bang in the middle of your town, our town. Is there literally nothing that we can do that gets them responsible or actually encourages them to move back to where they were and where I do believe they said that they're going to go back to? But we seem to have ground to a halt, and it's an ongoing cycle. And I agree with you, it's just at times, it's just gut wrenching.
I think perhaps we could also explore having a discussion with enforcement at Brecon on the planning conditions on the basis that it was supposed to be temporary.
Yeah.
Leslie?
Just bumping on the same subject, because it's already been through the courts, is there nothing that we can go back to the courts with? I don't know how the judicial review ended, whether there was something at the end of that.
There isn't this. My statement was read out as well as the statements of some other resident impact statements, which the judge read out and said it was a very, very serious breach of the permissions and hence the fine. I would have thought at that point that there would have been a condition, like if you do this again, this will happen to you, but I don't know whether that was the case or not.
No.
But,
Sharon has just advised that that is something that we can check.
yeah, I would have thought so, because otherwise it's meaningless, isn't it? £300,000 to a multi-million pound turnover company, it's not going to make any difference to them at all, is it really?
Is there anything else in the public?
Same thing about banning poultry, have they upped their production? Because there's a lot more orders coming in with chickens in, a lot more freezer orders going out in the last few weeks. There's
We,
one small guts being put in a storage tank, you know what I mean?
I think the weather does help as well. I say help, hinder. But we did receive an update on all of the production and everything they were doing and all their measures and everything else. And it was given to us in quite a lengthy, I think it was like a 2-hour presentation.
Yeah.
I did ask for the presentation, the slides, for me to obviously be able to advise you right now. Obviously, I don't have that information, but as they haven't been circulated, I will chase that and request them again. Because I think it would be helpful for us to have those.
There's a lot more orders.
Sorry, when I was going to the meetings, which was before COVID, wasn't it, and then it was stopped, we had endless PowerPoint presentations from all and sundry, and it's all lies, I'm afraid, because it was all rubbish. They do that to try and, beat you into submission. Look, this is what we've done, this is all the readings, this is this, this, that. And there is no odour, because we can prove it because we've got all these figures. But the fact of the matter, you step outside, what do you smell? So I wouldn't be swayed by PowerPoint. We've had them all, haven't we, Vera?
Yes, we have. Useful PowerPoints.
Endlessly, and that's what they do, that's how they operate.
Thank you. Councillor Westby.
Yeah, I've seen one or two, well, more than one or two, several vehicles going around with huge refrigeration units on the back, going through town as exceptional loads. I do wonder if they've temporarily upped the production and that's beaten the odour control system, because there's no reason why there should be a smell.
Councillor Taylor.
It's barbecue season. There's going to be more like that. This time of year is barbecue. Most people like a chicken drumstick, don't they? It's probably why there's been more lorries about.
Yeah, but I don't think planning department, it was planning department with the filters was like this, what we're now seeing on the lorries. Just give a regular bison coming in, chickens, and the freezer lorries coming out quite regular diagonally.
They've taken on contracts with Lidl's as well now, haven't
Yeah.
they? So they probably
That's
have
why they're up to
expanded
date.
production.
Mm.
and it's a smell.
Okay, so we'll further debate this later down the agenda under the correspondence. Does anyone have anything to add? Not on parliamentary.
Yeah,
No.
I'd like to ask, can it be considered that, could we have a ULEZ, an ultra low emission zone, and that we only have these lorries coming through the town at certain times of the day? The van lorries in particular, when they do go through the town, you can smell that aroma for minutes or good half an hour after they've been through the town. Why can't we as a town have an ultra low emission zone so that we're only getting lorries and this smell going through the town at certain times of the day, so it is restricted?
Sharon, do you think that's something that we could?
Yeah, I mean, I have looked into this sort of thing before, and there is a town council, I think it's called Stondon or something, and they were successful in banning lorries. So it has been done before.
Is it something that we can explore?
We can try to explore it, yeah.
Okay, so Sharon's gonna go away and have a little look into this, and then we'll bring that back perhaps to the next meeting.
Maybe just heavy goods vehicles rather than a low emission.
Yeah.
I think, you know, bearing in mind we're a rural area and we have farm machinery going from town all the time. Low emissions may be the wrong route, but heavy goods vehicles may be a better option.
Okay, we'll review this at the next Environment Committee meeting. Thank you for the suggestion.
Just to clarify, I was on about lorry embargo rather than ULEZ.
Yeah, I was going to say, it might be new to the town.
Yes.
To do heavy vehicles rather than low emissions. Low emissions normally deals with exhaust fumes,
Yeah.
as opposed to any sort of
Yeah.
fumes.
Yeah.
And older vehicles.
We've got this on the agenda later.
Yeah.
Councillor Dow.
We did try many moons ago to get a 7.5 restriction,
That was what it was, yeah.
yeah, and we tried and tried, it was pushed out there.
I remember that.
Although we did try.
You did try, I remember.
Ah.
I think with some of our tractors and stuff, what they pull and that, they're well over 7.5 ton.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we would struggle as a rural town.
Okay. Are we all happy for me to move on? Yes. Thank you. So moving on, item 5, that's minutes of the Environment Committee on the 21st of August, 2023. I'm hoping everyone's read them in advance of the meeting. Can I please have either a place for acceptance or some amendments, please?
Yeah, and not directly amendments, but it's one of the bullet points perhaps we can put on the agenda for the next meeting. Insofar as their updates were asked on several projects.
We-
it seems to have dropped.
It has not. We have item 6, matters arising, where I will be giving a report
Excellent.
On-
Thank you very much.
everything to date.
Good stuff.
Are we happy with their accuracy though?
Accuracy, yeah.
Can I have a proposal and a seconder, please? Councillor Jay Taylor, seconded by Councillor Wenham, and a show of hands, please. And I think that's all of the members that were then.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
Members of
we're
the
staying
committee. Okay, so item 6, which is matters arising, items not on the agenda. So I have, as a consequence of the matters that were raised at that meeting, gone back through all of the committee minutes to November 2021, when we re-established the Environment Committee. And any actions or outstanding resolutions, I've got action updates for. So I'll try and get through them as quick as I can. Firstly, from November 2021, we had cycle racks to be installed at Gamers Meadow and near Rosecroft School. Presently, they have been installed by Rosecroft School, but not at Gamers Meadow. So that is an outstanding action. The 17th of January 2022, lighting to be considered at the Mugger to explore costs and planning. We did consult Brecon Council, and they did advise that actually planning permission wouldn't be required. And in July, a resolution was passed that we would obtain quotations and consult environmental health. This hasn't yet been actioned. We do need to engage the environmental health team. to consider or to ensure that the luminance and the positioning wouldn't cause a nuisance to local neighbouring properties, and the costings still need to be obtained. Once environmental health have been engaged and quotes have been sought, then we'll bring it back to this committee for further consideration, because I feel like it's likely that the installation would be quite expensive, so we need to consider whether or not that is actually something that we want to progress once we know what those costs would
Can you
be.
just give me the date of that resolution again?
So it was first,
July, was it July?
yeah, so it was actually, hang on. No, sorry, March. In July, we were advised that we needed to consult environmental health.
The resolution was March 20.
23.
So
And it was first
middle of this year.
raised, in January 2022. Okay, so moving on, we had the project at the Dell, and there was a couple of resolutions that were passed. One was to install the steps, which has been completed. One was to remove the first gate and to lower the second gate, which has been completed. However, the part that hasn't been actioned was to construct a gravel and board walkway near the car park to the cemetery, like from the car park to the cemetery in the Dell. Unfortunately, at this point, I know it has been 18 months, but we are now only down to 2 ground staff. So we have kind of limited resources, and I'm not sure, have our interviews started yet? No.
Yeah, that would be Wednesday.
Okay, so we've got interviews for grounds persons from Wednesday onwards. So hopefully in the not too distant future, and before conditions get worse and it becomes a slip hazard, we might be able to implement something. And as well, of course, with grass cutting season coming to a close, but at the moment our resources are a little bit stretched. In February, we had a discussion around sensory play areas and community gardens. And the resolution was to prepare a brief for councillors Leslie and Tyra for when they meet with developers and the planning authority to try and ensure that those things are taken into consideration. I suppose with things like the SU to make sure that they're included. And our administration have looked but haven't been able to find anything on record that's relating to this. I did message Councillor Tyra today to ask if he ever received the brief. And he has not yet replied. But anything outstanding that I don't have the information on, whether or not that brief has been provided, I will feed back at the next meeting.
Was that February 23?
22.
22, thank you.
Okay, we then had a resolution around the youth facility that we wanted for the recreation ground, and initially it was thought that the brick building, Dead Man's Hut, on the recreation ground could be formed into a shelter and would be made a project with a that would then obviously do a briefing costs under a working group that would be myself, Councillor Westby and Councillor Dale. Now that was then brought back in March 2022, so not long after, and the proposal then changed that actually a seating and shelter would be looked at in conjunction with the skate park redevelopment, which obviously hasn't been forthcoming, and that Dead Man's Hut would be demolished. Now, obviously, no action has been taken on this, and I do wonder if this is something that should be added to the next agenda to review, because I think it's quite a drastic measure. I don't know if we fully actually put a lot of consideration into the decision when we made it, because we made one decision and we voted on it so quickly. But there's been no progress in that respect. And also, from our walkabout, I think there was discussions about public urination and quite unpleasant things happening at the skate park, which obviously neighbours a children's play area. And there was a discussion about public toilets, and the town council do have a budget of £100,000 to spend on public toilets. So perhaps that avenue could be explored. But I think that that would be something that would require an agenda item for us to discuss. So yeah, so we're going to bring that back to the next meeting. We had a resolution as well at the same time for the first plot, in the Queen Square allotments to be used as a community composting area and a community plot. This again hasn't been actioned. I think it is quite disappointing that we're not any further forward after all this time. But again, our grounds team is hopefully now about to grow. And this is something that, you know, can be added to their list and hopefully actioned. And they can be instructed accordingly. The land at Blackthorn Road was again discussed at the same time. And we had instructed the clerk to inquire with Breckland Council whether or not we could take ownership or adopt that land. And if so, you know, if there would be any conditions that would need to be met, because as I think we're aware, there's about £80,000 in S106 monies that's allocated to that land for us to spend, but we don't actually have ownership of the land. It's a lot of money. So that was something that we were going to explore. I asked obviously the ladies in the office if they could check and see if there was any updates. There's no further updates from April 2022. I did email the Land and Development Officer at Breckland Council today myself to inquire, and we'll feed back at the next meeting, and if appropriate, include the agenda item. May 2022, the Jubilee Memorial. So at present, obviously the application has been made for the S106 monies. That did come with a deadline, a time frame of which the money had to be spent within. So it was a year of Breckland releasing the funds, which expires now in January, I do believe. So we really have our backs to the walls with this, because I don't think anything had really progressed since February last year when the application was made. Nobody had really done anything with it. But Sharon is very aware of the situation, as is Anne. Sharon, had you managed to get an extension from Breckland on the money?
Not yet, no.
But that is something that
I'm waiting to
Sharon,
hear back from them. Yeah, they haven't got back to me yet.
Sharon is trying to get us an extension.
I seem to remember that the hold up on that, because obviously we were going to allocate it to the Jubilee Woods, was the hold up from Breckland Council sorting out who owned what bit of land for the development for the.
No, I think I've got the emails, but I don't have them in front of me right now. But I think we've received confirmation some time ago that the land is currently in our ownership. And
Oh, it is
yeah,
now.
Yeah, it is in our ownership. So yeah, so hopefully we'll have more to feedback on that, either in this committee or at an EGM, because like I say, time is against us. But once we know what the position is with the funds and whether or not we can get an extension for their spend, Sharon will advise us accordingly. But in July 2022, the restoration and replacement of the town signs. So the town sign on London Road, we resolved that we wouldn't replace the second town sign, but instead explore options of 4 welcome to Attleborough signs for the main entrances to the town. It was then later resolved in October 2022 that we'd obtained 3 quotes for each size in 1.2 metres and 1.5 metres. And I think this was then referred to full council, but I'm not aware that it's developed any further. We then had.
I think there's an issue with land ownership and actually locating the site to site them, yeah. I think there's not enough room.
Oh, okay.
In certain locations
So that
anyway.
that fell short then.
It needs a
So why was that not on an agenda anywhere? If you've not been able to find it, why was that discussion not?
I think once it went to full council, obviously the discussion was to obtain the quotes.
Yeah, I mean, if the land ownership
come,
was an issue, why is that not minuted anywhere?
Did it come back to full council? Was that discussion of full council?
It's just a recollection I've got.
Okay. So that, as Councillor Westby's just advised, would need exploring further with land ownership and positioning of those signs to make sure that there was the sufficient space to do so. We then had matters that arose from a councillor's walkabout, which was to paint the VE bench black and have it installed in the cemetery. As we may have noticed, it was installed in Queen Square. and also to approach the youth offending team to see whether or not they'd be able to assist with the painting of the railings in Queen Square. So this was postponed due to or pending improvements in the weather, with a suggestion to pick it back up in the spring of 2023. But to date, there's been no further correspondence to make these arrangements. So I think we could, I mean, there's a couple of options on this, but again, might be something to consider at a future meeting, is whether or not we actually want to re-engage the Youth Justice Service, or, you know, do it ourselves in-house, or, you know, outsource the works to a third party and obtain some quotes to get them done, because they needed doing then, which was July 2022. They're not getting any better. They're starting to rust. They look a bit of a mess. Some of them are a bit bent up. And as we all know, the square is the, you know, crown jewel of Attleborough, isn't it? So, so again, that is something that we will be bringing back and maybe having further discussion around. Got August 2022. This is the wildflowers at Decoy Common and Gamers. So obviously at Decoy, the suggestion was poppies. But this was first discussed in August 2022, and in October, the following October, I provided a report on the costings per kilo or half acre. Councillor Westby was going to use the topographical research to identify an area for planting. However, we were then told in April 2023 that the Wildlife Trust had advised against planting until they'd visited the site. In June, it was agreed to form a project for the planting at Decoy, which would form part of a wider plan for the area. Since June, we haven't moved any further forward, although, and this is something to stress on a lot of this now, is that at the minute, our administration has significantly reduced since August. And I think that, you know, in this period of transition, it's something that we need to respect, is that things might progress a little bit slower, and that we understand this and are patient because of this. Now, the position that we'd be in with sowing seeds is that it wouldn't be able to be done till the spring at the earliest, or next autumn, but that would be depending on timescales with engaging the Wildlife Trust, who I don't think have actually produced the report yet and had those site visits, and then obviously establishing a plan to move forward with. So I think that is going to be maybe a bit of a slow burner, but the ambition is there and we have agreed it. In November 2022, there was an item to discuss the closed cemetery and the headstones that are piled in the far corner. And it was agreed that, you know, we would look at a solution that would include all of the names on those headstones. We did discuss, you know, making them into a patio, but we were concerned about trip hazards. We did discuss popping around, but I think there was a lot of concern, and the way that we thought would be best to do this was to have one memorial that would include all of the names. Obviously, this hasn't progressed. It's not come back to the committee for further discussion or to look at designs or to look at costings. But I think actually having been there last week, and I mean, Vera goes through every day, I think it is something that we should maybe try to prioritise, because I was a little bit concerned actually that how they are stacked and how some of them have come away in bits and pieces, that actually it's probably a trip hazard and probably needs to be sorted for that alone, or at the very least in the meantime cordoned off, because yeah, I actually didn't think it was probably very safe.
Majority of names you can't read the wall. You know, they're absolutely smooth, a lot of them, with age.
Well, that's disappointing, but I think it is something that we need to start moving on, because they can't just be left in a pile to rot forever. So and this, I think this might have just been an error in the heading, because it was under the heading of railings and bus shelters, but actually the resolution was in respect of a bin. And the resolution was to request a bin on Morris Gamer Road by the letterbox, and to replace the bin on Connaught Road that had rusted badly. This was then raised again in the January meeting where Councillor Dale queried whether the 2 bins had been installed, and the clerk confirmed it was on the groundsman's to-do list. I have checked and neither bin has been replaced. And I'm not sure if the request was ever made for the installation on Morris Gamer Road. So again, that is something, all of these things now, obviously the ladies in the office, they're all aware of, and will slowly start picking through this list because they had backed up quite significantly. We then had a resolution regarding the S106 monies that we were going to obviously use that £46,000 for play equipment. No final resolutions have been made. I think this is going to be added to the next full council agenda now that we've completed our walkabout and obviously inspected our play areas. We know what's lacking from where. And like I say, there is £46,000 that's available. And yeah, we will give that our consideration shortly because I think the application has to be made before January. So we then had February 2023, so we're now in this year. London Road picnic benches. It was resolved to install 2 new picnic benches at London Road. This has not been actioned yet. We've got March 2023, which was to install 3 accessible picnic benches and to visit and explore options for covered seating subject to planning, designs and liaison with the football club and the recreation ground. Again, the installation of those benches, we all know from our walkabout, have not been actioned yet. I don't know if the liaison has been, so that would be administrative. A bin review was something that we had discussed as well in March, and the council administration again couldn't find a breakdown or report on record, but as a valuable but non-urgent document, I think that this could probably be progressed when the office has time and could wait until we're running at full capacity. I don't know if everyone would agree to that.
I'd like to stress that I think it was rubbish bins and dog rubbish bins as well, so I think.
Yeah, and I think it was a full review of everything that's owned by us, everything that's owned by Breckland, and what's serviced by Breckland or Serco or ourselves, so that there was a comprehensive view of.
I did speak to the head groundsman today, and he's going to take another spot tour of all the open spaces, and I think we'll set that for Wednesday, Thursday. And I've got a list of bins, so we're going to do a process of deduction, find out where those bins are, and BBC, Breckland will have to help us, but we have got that in hand, and we're going to make a start on Thursday. So.
Oh well, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I just thought it's not urgent, so I didn't want to overload you. I know there's obviously there's a lot of this.
But I can get to know where all the other spaces are, and also use bins at the same time.
Perfect, thank you, Sharon. Okay, so then moving on, April 2023, which was the sign for the London Road official opening, and a resolution was passed for a modest plaque at the Wheel Park and at London Road, noting their official openings. Again, this hasn't yet been actioned, consequently, we'll include an agenda item for designs, prices and wording to be considered at a future meeting. I don't want to overload the next agenda, so maybe not the next agenda. This might take a little while because obviously there is a lot that needs to be done, but we are now aware of them and they will be addressed in due course. In July 2023, so more recently, it was agreed, and this is in respect to Decoy Common, to explore options of fencing and hedgerows along the A11 and bring back to the council. This hasn't yet been actioned, but can be included in the overall project that I've already referenced. If we're, do you know what I mean? I feel like we're reviewing our planting and everything else at Decoy Common, then there's no reason that that can't all form part of that same project. The cemetery hedges, there was a resolution passed for their removal. This has been put on hold pending, you know, approaching the plot holders to gauge their views and to consult them. Paula hadn't received any instruction to do this, so that hasn't yet been done. But again, now it's on their radar, I'm sure it will be addressed. In July, we had the Queen Square Cinema. Again, this was another thing that was then referred to full council via an EGM. It was put on hold and no further action has been taken to date. We had a request from the youth club for the storage shed out the back. And it does seem that further consideration may be required at a future meeting following discussions with the youth club organisers due to the size and scale. I think it's actually going to be, or would need to be, a lot larger than we'd first anticipated. We've got August 2023, so this was our last meeting, and it was the repair and replacement of the benches outside the old post office. Our administration is still trying to identify the landowner so that we can move forward and complete those works pending their approval. The repointing and repairs to the church wall, contact has been made with Breckland and the church faculty, and we're just awaiting their responses. I think there's actually been correspondence on that today, so hopefully, yeah, that will be moving quickly. And then the London Road dog walk new fencing. Obviously, at our last full council meeting, we accepted the quote to redo the works, which will commence November onwards. And that is where we're at currently. Like I say, all of these things we're now on top of. We are in a transitional period at the moment. We are running on reduced staff hours. So please just be patient and understanding. Councillor Taylor.
Always wanting to be the unpopular one, I'm going to be. Firstly, though, I'm going to start on a positive note. Thank you for working so hard on the resolutions that come out of our last meeting, ladies, and getting onto those so quickly. However, you have just listed 20, or best part through my little scribble, resolutions that this committee made that have not been actioned properly. And actually, from my scribble, I can only see 2 that potentially have been half done. I think this committee needs to have a good, hard, long think about whether or not we are serious about the stuff that we want to do, because nobody has pushed for these resolutions to be looked into. Nobody has scrutinised why they've not been done. And from where I'm sitting looking at all of the things that you listed, that some are 2 years old, somebody that was responsible for action in these resolutions dropped the ball majorly, and this committee and this council sat back and let it happen. So I think we all need to go home and consider whether or not we are serious about delivering stuff for our community, because this list and your report does not make us look good. It's sad, but thank you so much for working so hard on the last lot of things to be done. But these 2 years of stuff is considerably dropping the ball.
Noted. Councillor Bond.
Yeah, thank you for hard work and the list of projects that we've drawn up. Sharon's got them, includes all those. The one thing I would say, I take aboard what you say, Councillor Estee. Some projects take a long while to come to fruition, and there's a lot of work that's needed before you get to a decision point. So that perhaps colours the timescale. There are certain ones which there are lots of debate, and being the nature of committees, resolutions are not very quick to come to fruition. So there is that. A lot of work was done, but undoubtedly things get dropped between the cracks. So there are some things that should have been carried through. The idea of having a review of something, it's easy to say, but it's very difficult to do, and it's very difficult to produce something that is meaningful at the end of it. It takes several iterations. So yes, I think everyone's going to be mindful about getting things done quickly and effectively, but you mustn't be blinded to the fact that there are certain things there that had taken time to get to a point where something could be done, because we all work to due diligence, we all work to committee procedures, so we've just got to be careful that it's not exaggerated.
No, I take on board your comments. I think now we have a very big understanding of where we're at. what has progressed and obviously what clearly hasn't. We can now identify where we start, what the priorities are, quick fixes, benches not being installed, you know, cycle racks not being installed. They're things that we can probably get done quite quickly. Some things, as you say, may take a little bit longer. Some things might be more urgent. I personally feel like the improvements to the access to the Dell and the cemetery, that would be high on my list, because I think it is a bit of a slip hazard and I wouldn't want someone to get hurt on our property. But I think, you know, it's going through them now, which I'm sure Sharon and Anne between themselves are fully capable of doing, identifying what can be done quickly, what is a priority, and getting these actions resolved in a timely manner. And I have the strongest confidence that they will. So, and I think as well, just to make sure that there is a due diligence from the committee itself to have matters arising on the agenda moving forward as a standing item would probably be a good idea, so that we can keep on top of this. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I take on board all of those comments. However, cycle racks, only one being installed. January 2022, you were informed those cycle racks were here. Like, that's January 2022, and only one of them has been installed. Last year, there was hardly any grass cutting, regardless of how many members of staff we have or haven't got. We literally only used to have 2 ground staff. The only extra areas this council now has is Lomond Road and Signet that are a significant size that affects that. So no grass cutting through last year because the weather was so hot is just ludicrous that only one cycle rack got fitted. And I'm going to harp on, I sit on overview and scrutiny at Breckland, and obviously quarterly they scrutinise what's been done and how it's got on. And I think maybe that this council maybe needs to look through its personnel committee to maybe have a meeting quarterly with members of staff to see how projects are progressing and to scrutinise whether they've been done or not. Scrutiny is constructive, it doesn't have to be negative. Unfortunately, sometimes in this chamber, it always comes across as negative, or people feel that it's being negative, and actually sometimes it does promote creativity and stuff. I just think there are things here that could have been done that just have not been done. There are projects like the Jubilee Park or Woodland that do take a while, and maybe the flowers with liaising with outside bodies, like the planting of seeds on Decoy Common, could take up. But a lot of these are just administration errors, and the person that was in charge of those is responsible for that. There are big projects, exactly, but a lot of this 20 are not big projects.
Okay. Noted. If we can move on, just so mindful that there is a little bit for us to get through, and we are 40 minutes into the meeting already. But I just wanted to be thorough. Didn't want, do you know what I mean, a repeat of the last meeting where we were caught off guard and wasn't prepared with updates.
Sorry, can I
That's
just
right.
suggest the list that you really comprehensive, can that be produced so that?
Yeah, of
you know,
course.
we
I mean, I
review and then we
was
can-
naturally going to share it with the office, but I don't mind copying councillors as well. Yeah, of course. Next, we have item 7, which is Carver's Lane, Attleborough, the public open space adoption, which is for our consideration. We, all committee members, should have received the email from, I think was it from Sharon? Yep. Which obviously included the confirmation on the commuted sum, which was, oh, I haven't got it in front of me, but I think it was 53,700 and something. So a considerable amount for us to consider, and also the 6 pieces of play equipment which Breckland have now said they are duty bound to install. So with that in mind, would somebody like to get the ball rolling with the discussion? 53,752. Thank you, Sharon. Councillor Bond.
Yeah, the only thing that I raised when we first spoke about it was whether the £8.50 per square metre in the groundsman's opinion was, or the opposite's opinion, was sufficient. It is a policy, but I don't know, it would be nice to know whether we think that is, you know, an appropriate sum. I don't think we can do anything about it because it's actually a policy. But it'd be nice to know if that was appropriate. Otherwise, if it is appropriate, then it seems sensible to go ahead, especially since it's index linked and also the play equipment is going to be installed. And we will be index linked to look after it. So it seems sensible for us to do that. I just wanted to comfort that the £8.50, which is an official policy, our ground staff or the office is happy with that. It's not greatly out of.
That's taken me a bit by surprise, but I haven't checked that out, but, you could put a resolution that, if that is deemed appropriate, then you can, write the letter and say that we want to accept the open space, so. So I can check that out, but you can put sort of like, I only write a letter if that is deemed appropriate.
So as a condition.
As a condition, yeah.
Well, I'd put that forward as a proposal.
Sharon, were you able to find out whether or not the continuation tanks would be ours? Because I think there was a worry about maintenance of those.
This is just a meeting.
Thank you for coming today.
Yeah, I was able to find out in, no, not this meeting.
Okay, but we could also add that as a condition, perhaps.
Yeah. That is, yeah. Ownership, basically, ownership and future responsibility.
Yeah, because it's the future responsibility that we didn't particularly want to look at.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You were worried previously.
Well, that's something that we really hadn't considered before, but yeah, it is something that's just arisen, and yeah, we do need to make sure that if take on the adoption of the land, that the attenuation ponds, whose responsibility would they be? And I feel sure that Bretland will probably say it's yours, but you need to be assured that if it is, is that structurally going to cause you a problem only if the pipes underneath get damaged really, or they're faulty or whatever, then obviously that can be quite costly to repair. So
Does that make sense to everyone?
I mean, yeah.
Yes, we are short of open space, but
Yeah, we don't want to
we
take
don't
ourselves
want
on
to take
big
a put a
liability.
noose around our necks. And
Yeah.
it's not,
So
it's going to be really costly.
if it's going to be costly, obviously I won't write less, and I will bring that to council with the update. Would that be okay?
Yeah. Okay, so just trying to clear up Roger's proposal. So there's a proposal to accept the public open space with needed sum and play equipment installed on the basis that the index figure is for fair and proportionate.
Yeah.
And also that the continuation ponds, the maintenance of those would then not become our responsibility.
Yeah, that's it.
Are you happy
That's
to,
good.
yeah?
That's good.
Councillor McKinnon, you
Yeah.
got in that?
Yeah, you
seconding
do not
that?
want responsibility for any kind of ponds or
Yeah.
waterworks or anything like that.
So councillor Bond proposing, councillor
second.
McKinnon seconding, and a show of hands, everybody. Thank you very much, that's unanimous. Next we have Queen's Road allotment signage. So basically some signage had been put up because there was residents, so basically restricting non-plot holders access from the site. And I actually had a resident come to me about this because he said, well, actually, I like to go down there and have a chin wag with my friend while he's working his plot.
Yeah.
And it says that I can no longer do that. So when I approached Anne and asked, why have we taken this measure? She said actually there've been a lot of reports of people walking their dogs in there, and obviously dogs messing, it's just not appropriate. So actually, I thought that a more appropriate suggestion would be to put some signage up, maybe saying no dogs beyond this point. But I obviously wanted to bring this to committee to see whether or not there would be agreement for that kind of signage.
Who
Does
takes a
anyone-
dog onto somebody's allotment?
We have to skip someone's garages.
Yeah.
What are our thoughts on this?
It makes sense. Let's
Yeah.
just get some.
I just think, I mean, we're not then restricting who can go down there. If people want to go down and see their friends and socialise, it's a public open space.
Yeah.
But I think maybe to just say no dogs beyond this point might be more appropriate.
Might be a public open space, but we do charge them rent for the allotment, so we owe them
Exactly.
some kind of.
And as well, I know at some places as well, like, do you know what I mean, they might have animals, chickens on their plots. Do you know what I mean, do you want dogs in there, maybe disturbing the animals? I don't know, I think it's something maybe that we should do for a couple of reasons.
Because an allotment that I'm currently responsible for is a lot tighter and it's actually got gates on it and only the allotment plot holders have the code and it's completely fenced off, so actually the public aren't allowed in there. And that works quite well because the only visitors that are allowed are by consent of the plot holder. So if you do have a lot of people walking around, that then annoys the existing plot holders because they don't feel as if they've got any control over their plot. Sometimes if people do get in, I mean, even when it has been enclosed and the gate is locked, you still get produce that goes missing.
And how much if this is something, was this something that was implemented under, do you know what I mean, while you've been there? So do you know what kind of cost was involved in?
For the fencing.
For the
and
fencing
it's
and
got a fair few thousand, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason, they had one gate on there that you could just pop over it, then they've got a taller gate, and I think that's about £3,000. So I don't know if that particular allotment has got fencing around it or
It currently just has one big swinging gate.
Yeah, and so that's where you access and, yeah.
But then also, as we previously discussed, the first plot, we were actually going to allocate as a
Yeah.
community composting area,
Yeah.
the community plot. So I think
Yeah, so therefore
that
that
actually
can't
is,
necessarily be
that,
practical,
yeah.
but, it's just a consideration.
Shall we try and start with
Thank
some
you.
dog signs?
Yes.
Yeah,
And see how, and maybe do a little bit of a post on our social media that whilst produce is grown in poop, that's not the poop we want down there.
lovely. Okay, so are we all in agreement? I think it's administrative. I don't think it's a
Yeah, no, I don't think it needs a
Are we
resolution.
happy for?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Can I just say something about that community composting pot?
Mhm.
I seem to remember that what they were putting there was the soil from the cemetery,
Yeah.
crematorium. And we were supposed to be finding whether we had to dispose of that in a sensitive, timely manner. And I
I
don't
don't think it was restricted, was it? It was found that it wasn't restricted.
it wasn't restricted.
Yeah.
The only consecrated ground was if the grave was exhumed.
Yeah, I recall that.
It's already been removed
Yeah.
from consecrated ground.
Yeah.
So if there was any restrictions on it, you've already broken the law.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, it's done, it's out of consecrated ground, it's in an allotment.
Personally, I think the best thing we could do is just take the digger in there and just pull it. And
I know that's the reason why
Yeah.
the community compost didn't happen, because they were sort of concerned over that as well. Just as a matter of clarity.
Yeah, well, I've been here since May and we've already had this discussion since I've sat at this table, that the soil, about the soil being moved and that it was already moved.
Okay, moving on. We've got item 9, which is Gravesner Park allotments. And this was really from our previous walkabouts. I actually think this was raised, but I couldn't, I think it was raised in full council. I couldn't find any resolution, but I think it is something that we have discussed previously. Their plots down there are quite a significant size. And while some maintain them absolutely beautifully, there are others that only work a small portion of their plot, so either half of it, a third of it. And I did wonder if we should maybe write to each of the plot holders and say, is your plot a manageable size? Would you like to reduce it or keep it at the size it's at? And we could split them down. Not only does that then, you know, alleviate that pressure from the plot holder that they're unable to maintain the whole thing, it would make it tidier because someone else would then be working that part of the plot. And also, if it's 2 plots, not 1, that will take people off our waiting list, presuming we still have one. Councillor Wenham.
Wasn't this discussed after that walkabout?
Yeah.
The council meeting?
It was I couldn't find the minutes for it. I've gone through all the environment.
Previous-
I'm sure
previous
it was
walk,
full
yeah.
council.
It was discussed.
But I think this suggestion was made then. I just don't know if a resolution was passed or if it was actioned. So presuming that it wasn't, are we happy to proceed on that basis? Councillor Taylor?
Obviously, there are clauses in our letting agreements for allotments that they have to be worked and maintained. So if we were being facetious, those plots that are only being maybe a third used or a quarter used are actually not maintaining the plots to what our standards say they should be, which is sad because it's probably due to no fault of their own. And I don't know if Councillor Dow will remember, but when the 106 agreements were being done for Taylor Wingby and those allotments were plotted out, it was council's view at that time to take on the plots and split them before they were ever let out. However, that never happened. They were just let out the minute they come online. They were let out as is. So this is already something that was in the pipeline many, many years ago. And I think, like, if they're not using them, we have a waiting list. It makes sense to write to those and ask them if they would mind splitting it, or if they would consider splitting it, and let more people have a bite at the cherry, growing their own little bit of the good life.
Councillor
Is
Weston?
it feasible to offer different size allotments for different rates, and then that appeals to a wider market as well?
Well, we could do a half rent.
I think we have different rates
Yeah.
anyway for
Yeah,
our
yeah.
allotments, don't we? There are different rates already.
Yeah, they have certain
Right.
rates. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if someone's not working their allotment, because they get checked monthly, then the ground staff and then Paula will actually get hold of the allotment holder and say, have you got a problem? Can we help? Would
Okay.
you like us to split your allotment? She's not getting very far with it. I
Maybe
think
the
we
question
need
needs to be
something
more that you're not working your whole
Yeah.
allotment,
Yeah,
because there are quite a few on the Taylor Wingby site that don't
Yes.
work the whole allotment. So
Yeah.
maybe we need to change how we're phrasing it rather than what we're like.
Put an emphasis on the fact that while they're working their plot, they're not working the whole plot.
yeah, yeah.
Would they like to reduce the size and maybe include that if they did reduce their size, it would obviously
Yeah.
reduce their rent?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Gotta give it an incentive.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll make that proposal. Would anyone like to second it? Councillor Dale, and show of hands, please. Thank you very much.
Unanimous.
That was, thank you. Sorry, Sharon, I should have said. Okay, we've then got full stop netting. This is for the Cedar Drive London Road play area, whichever you prefer to call it. We obviously discussed this on our walkabout. Not only is there balls going over to neighbouring properties on the Cedar Drive side and on the Kent Close side rather, sorry, but also I think it could probably be a bit of a health and safety hazard with how close it is to London Road and vehicles on that road with the other mugger. So I'm of the mind that we have full stop nets in both areas behind both muggers. Having looked into this, you can get them for 150, 200 pounds. They're not extremely expensive. They'd come within Sharon's delegated spend. And I actually wonder if we can move Sharon to, explore this and make a purchase.
Can the groundsman pick them up? Or how do they have to be put up? Especially is my first thing. And I think the second thing, to have them behind both nets, but behind both muggers, is a good idea. You know, really, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think the ground staff probably could install them, but I think it would be a wise idea to maybe engage them and just say, how confident would you be? A lot of the companies probably do a supply and fit.
We don't want that situation with fencing and they're not doing
Exactly, so I think we could make inquiries on supply and fit.
Make sure that's,
I discussed with John when we were having a look at the London Road fence before, and he said he was happy to do fencing, you know, he's confident to do it. It's just whether he's got the time to do it, obviously, at the moment.
Councillor S. Taylor.
I'm just going to ask, while we're talking about this area and the fencing and the cricket, did John manage to get those bars off of the stumps, off the muggers to stop them? Has he done that yet? Do we know? Yeah, to get the wickets
Not
off,
that
the
I've-
stumps off.
Not that I've
Because when we walked about with him, he did say he would try and get them off there as quickly as possible to try and stop some of the noise. If we can just check.
On Thursday.
Yeah, if that's okay, thank
Thank
you.
you,
Sharon.
Sharon.
Okay, so are we?
Rather than that, did he tighten the bar that was rattling, banging?
The fencing.
That was
yeah.
the bar that was
We
making
suggested
noise.
maybe
Did
if you
do
put a
that?
bar, if he could fix the bar across the front of the
Yeah.
fencing, it would stop it.
It was a piece
Rattling.
wasn't it?
Sorry, Sharon.
No, I've got that. yeah.
Sorry, Sharon.
Okay, so, but are we happy to give that delegation
Yeah,
to Sharon
yes,
under her
yeah,
discretionary
yeah.
space, just
Proposing
to,
Yeah.
just to get the purchase
Are
made?
you
'Cause-
proposing it?
Yes, I'll make
Yeah,
that
I'll
proposal.
second it.
Councillor Taylor seconded, and a show of hands, please. Thank you, everybody. Next we have correspondence, which is the Bannerman Poultry fowl odour. We've already discussed this. I think there was a general agreement around the table that we could make representations to Bannerman Poultry themselves and the Environment Agency. Is that how we would like to proceed?
Yeah.
Is it possible to include perhaps the health and safety executive? Because there must be some sort of health issues. Or would that come under?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think that environmental health would probably be the
And
most
also
appropriate.
enforcement as well.
planning enforcement as well.
Must be issues under the Factories Act or something like that. If operatives working in that environment, it stinks
Mm.
down the road. It must stink on site, like
Yeah.
horrendous.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
You mean for the conditions for the workers?
Yeah,
Yeah.
They don't, sorry, I've spoken to some workers inside, they don't smell it. It's when it goes outside the thing, that I have asked them actually, I've got a
right,
few
okay.
that I've asked.
They
because
probably get conditioned to it
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah,
Mm.
they say, you know, inside, when the guts and that get outside,
Yeah.
that in the
Just a
chimney,
thought,
that
yeah.
Okay,
the smell is.
So it's not health and safety at the moment.
so the enforcement of Breckland, the Environmental Health Agency,
And them themselves.
Bannerman themselves, and also probably, the Environmental Department of Breckland, I think would be a good point to call. And I can give you the contact for the, portfolio holder as well.
I don't know if they're for anything to do with that.
I don't know.
Then what we were looking at,
Thank you.
they're for,
Deborah?
yeah, Department of, Department of Fisheries.
Thank you. Can I please have a proposal and a seconder for these? Councillor Dale, Councillor Wenham, and a show of hands. Thank you. That was unanimous as well. So we'll be making representations to all those authorities.
I don't know if I'm supposed to speak to you, but you do.
We can have a proposal and seconded to suspend standing orders. Councillor S Taylor, seconded by Councillor S McKinnon. And a show of hands, please. That is passed. You may speak.
Seagulls as well to do with Banners, because a lot of the businesses around gamers say that the seagulls take offal and fly up onto the roofs where they feed their ships with the offal. We consequently have vast flocks of seagulls circling all the time. They'll only go there if there's food, a food source. So I don't know if that helps you with regards to things like vermin.
Well, Councillor D'Souza did just suggest that perhaps we could raise that with President Health.
I think that ought to be put in the whole issue, so when we.
But again, I think that's Breckland Council.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, moving on. Item 12, the repair to the tennis court fencing. Obviously, we had the one quote that we considered, we discussed at full council, which was almost £1,000. I think it was 900 and something by memory. 988. Yeah, and then obviously we've got the alternative quote that has been circulated today that is a little bit cheaper, and it is the same gentleman that is now doing the replacement fencing at London
Is that
Road.
KM7?
Yes. What are your thoughts, members?
What's cheaper?
do if you get a good job and value money.
Yeah,
And a local, and he's local.
he is
which
local, yeah, he lives in town, I think, like, somewhere near Bristol Road, looking at his
Yeah.
quote. So are we happy to accept this quote?
I propose that we accept this quote.
Okay, that's councillor Dale, seconded by councillor D'Souza, on a show of hands. And that is unanimous as well.
May I say something on tennis courts? Well, my friend who has an allotment, she said she was down there the other day, and there was a mother and her 2 children riding their bikes inside the tennis court.
Okay.
They'd let themselves in to use it as a bike riding place, presumably because it's flat and easy.
Yeah,
How do we sort of get people to the idea that it's for tennis only?
I think maybe some appropriate signage, and actually I was there the other day when I obviously was going around and seeing, you know, what had been actioned, what hadn't, was the cycle racks there. And I did think that actually some of the signage that we put up, it's just laminated sheets of paper. I know it's quick and it's easy and it's like cost efficient, but I think actually if we're gonna have something that's up there permanently to say like, do you mean like this is available at request, or, you know, whatever it said, I think actually to have something that is permanent, some permanent signage, looks nicer, it's more tidy, you can get it, you know, at a reasonable cost. It doesn't cost the earth, does it, to have
There's a couple
some.
of local sign makers, there's one in Ellingham, one up the road.
Yeah, you've got, yeah, exactly, just, they're not even, where are they? Yeah, yeah, not quite in Wyndham though, are they? And then obviously, I think Marcus Privilege Design would probably be able to do it as well.
You can even just do it online.
Yeah.
You can order it, and that'd be a lot cheaper than that.
Yeah. Councillor Taylor.
I was gonna say, make the new signage, proper signage would make us look more professional as well. And if, I know we're talking specifically about, tennis courts at the moment, but some of the signage down on Gamers Meadow is very tacky and dated, while we're just talking signage. But, going back to lady with her kids, as long as they're not damaging the tennis court and no one wants to play tennis, I have no objection to someone teaching their kids to ride a bike maybe, or road safety or something in one of our areas, as long as they're not causing any damage. But it is nice to know that it is
Or
being
obstructing
used,
users.
or obstructing
Use it for
users
its
from actually
actual
using it for what
purpose.
it's used for. But it's nice to know it is getting used.
I think maybe, what might be appropriate is, while we're just talking about the tennis courts, if we do a review of some of our signage, so, you know, the signage that we have at Gamers that does look a little bit messy, you know, what is a permanent notice, what is a temporary notice, what can be, actually, you know, a little bit more well presented. And as well, we could look at the facts, for London Road and the skate park at the same time.
Yeah.
If we're placing an order, it might be cheaper to put 2 or 3 items in at once.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll bring that back to the committee and look at signage, across a few of our areas perhaps at the same time. Next is the second lot of public participation. Would anyone?
Yes.
Mr. Matthews.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank you for coming down to London Road to listen to our issues down there, the council that gave up their time. That is appreciated. And then I was going to raise really what Vera mentioned, as well as the big netting. Could we look at those panels, either weld them or take them off altogether? So I don't know whether they need to be there anyway, but please, could you consider that noise as well before you move them completely?
Okay, so I'm gonna assume that on the basis that it's still making noise, that maybe John hasn't been able to put in these sound dampening measures. Oh, okay, Anne's just advised.
Last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sorry, Anne.
So we've had John on leave for the last 2 weeks, we've been down
Yeah,
one
no
grand.
problem. Yeah, what I was going to say that when Barry was there, he used to tighten them. I used to ring it and you pass the message on to Barry to tighten them, but he told me that the screws are getting so badly worn, they will not tighten anymore. Councillor Leslie did mention about getting them welded, spot welded
Okay.
as well, but if you could bear that in mind, thanks for raising.
When John returns from his leave,
John's back, I can speak to him tomorrow.
and we'll raise that with him
Yeah.
tomorrow now that he's back. And hopefully we'll get that resolved as quick as possible, okay?
Yeah.
And hopefully those nets as well, please, Sharon, if that could be
Yeah.
put as a priority, because it is causing issues. Thank you. Anyone else, public participation? Mr. Bates.
An observation. quite a long list you went through earlier on. Disappointing as it was, isn't it? Someone's loaded the barrels and given you till January to spend £126,000, I make it roughly. Who's responsible? I echo what Councillor Taylor says, you have no oversight. None. I'm held to the fire every quarter. And I have to answer for it. Your staff do what they want within reason, what I see, or certain members did. I don't think that's acceptable. Frankly.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Thwaites, they are noted. I think that you said did and used past tense. Like I said, moving forward, I think we're going to be very mindful of what actions have been, you know, completed and what resolutions have been made. Sharon and Anne are doing a fantastic job at the moment, even on the reduced hours. And I think actually the efficiency that the office is working at the moment, I'm, like I said, very confident that these will
So a long run up to this point.
not fall off the radar again, okay?
So,
Anyone else, please? Okay. Items for the next agenda. Obviously, there was quite a few things that arose in matters arising. Are we happy, Councillor Taylor?
I was going to say, can you go away and liaise with
Please.
Sharon on the most important things to put on the
That
next
is what I
agenda?
was going to suggest. Thank you.
Which is-
Yeah, I think there was so many that I think actually we can't list them all now because the next agenda won't be able to facilitate them all. No, so I think actually and also if there's any burning matters that arise, obviously you're very welcome to put them to either myself or Sharon as well.
When you go through it, can you do some quick fixes? You know, as well as,
Yeah,
you know,
I think
there are some quick fixes there, if
Yeah.
you've got the money in the budget to do.
Yeah.
Or-
bits and pieces
all the
and-
things in stock, because I think
Things,
actually
yeah.
the bins, I think we put in a bulk order, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
So actually, if the bins on the road, we're just getting permission to put one on Forest Gamer, like, I think those things
Yeah.
could be actioned very quickly. The picnic benches, I think we again ordered like a bulk.
Those are quick fix, quick fix
Yeah.
things, which I think will be really beneficial.
Yeah. And like I say, like they're doing a great job, so I think anything that's outstanding as well, that's already had
Groundsmen were
resolutions in
running
place.
severely short staffed.
We are now, yeah.
Well, they have been, because wasn't one off sick for a long time, one on jury service, and
Yeah.
then there was one member of staff short
And
anyway.
one left a couple of months ago, so
Yeah.
since then, I'll say a couple of months ago, a month or two ago. And so since then, we've been down to two, and obviously with leave or any illness, then we're down to one. So our hands have been a little tied for the last couple of months, but like I say, we've got interviews starting shortly. Hopefully we'll have those appointments made, and if we can just crack on, now we know where we're at. And with that, the meeting is closed. Thank you, everybody.